What's going on, Godzilla Nation? This is our Godzilla. We are back with another installment of our Godzilla's footy tipping competition, looking ahead to round 14 action, the final weekend of the bye rounds. Thank you for joining me as always. Let's not talk about last week because I only tipped 2 last week and that was a pretty piss poor effort from myself. So we're getting into the last week of the bye rounds, which means next week we will have an updated tally of where everybody sits, and having a look at it, there are some people competing for that top spot. You're going to be eager to find out where everybody is sitting. I'm telling you right now, there is still a handful of people that are fighting for that number 1 spot, and with 9 rounds to go, this competition is still up for grabs by anybody. However, let's put that to the side. It is time to focus on the week ahead, which kicks off Thursday night football again this week at Optus Stadium with West Coast Eagles hosting Essendon. Essendon last week coming off of a very impressive win. I backed against them, tipped Hawthorn. I'm a complete idiot. Eagles coming off of the bye. Now, teams that come off the bye sometimes, running into teams that have a bit of momentum, can cause a bit of an upset in the way of dropping a game that they should win. However, I am still comfortably backing West Coast Eagles to get the job done against Essendon. I know Essendon travelled to West Coast last year. I know Essendon did them in a big way last year, but I think this year West Coast get their redemption. Thursday night football for me kicks off with the Eagles stamping a top 4 position. Friday night football at the SCG, Sydney taking on Hawthorn. Big game, especially now that we know that Ben Stratton is out for 2 weeks, and he, despite what you might say about him, defensively is a really good player. Sydney are heavy favourites to win this one. Hawthorn could prove difficult though. This is a really hard game because even last week, Hawthorn against Essendon, I wrote Hawthorn off in the last quarter when they were almost 50 points down, and then in a blink of an eye, they were only a couple of kicks behind. We've got to make some gutsy calls. I'm going to back Hawthorn to bounce back and beat Sydney at the SCG. We know Sydney doesn't have a good record at the SCG. I think Hawthorn on paper can get the job done against Sydney, even with Stratton out to not man up on Lance Franklin. Big call. But in this competition, ladies and gentlemen, you got to be willing to sometimes throw caution to the wind, have the good old Willis breezing within, having a good swirl around. And Hawthorn, for me, Friday night is going to get the job done over the Sydney Swans. Saturday afternoon at the MCG kicks off with Melbourne hosting Fremantle. Fremantle with 3 in a row. Very impressive year they are having this year. Melbourne coming off of the back of 4 losses in a row. And even though Melbourne go into this game as favourite, I am backing Fremantle to come down to the MCG and do a bit of a number on the Demons. Now, they defended Optus Stadium brilliantly last week against Port Adelaide. I rate Port Adelaide as a better team this season than I do Melbourne, despite my pre-season predictions, but let's not worry about those. I think, quite comfortably, Fremantle are going to put Melbourne to the sword. This could be the game that Simon Goodwin is really in trouble as the coach of that club. I really think it might be. Fremantle to tip the balance Saturday afternoon. We then head down to Marvel Stadium, just up around the corner, down the road, couple of U-turns. St Kilda taking on Brisbane. St Kilda coming off of a win. Brisbane coming off of the bye. And I am going to back Brisbane to come down to Melbourne and do a bit of a number on St Kilda. Even though St Kilda, they came back last week, I thought Gold Coast were going to do a number on them. When I saw the start of that game, I thought, you are absolutely kidding me, they're going to get done here. But they came back in good fashion. All the young kids that they brought in that week paid dividends. But I just feel, on paper, Brisbane have the stronger team, and I am backing Brisbane to get up against St Kilda, especially with some of the outs that St Kilda suffered from that game last week. I think some of that leadership is going to go a long way to St Kilda sliding just a little bit over the next couple of weeks. So Brisbane for me at Marvel, Saturday afternoon. And Saturday rounds out at Adelaide Oval with Port Adelaide taking on Geelong. Geelong just have green W's everywhere. We know exactly how Geelong have been running. Port Adelaide coming off of a loss. However, with that being said, good old Geelong's coming off of the bye, and we all know how Geelong go when they come off the bye, ladies and gentlemen. So this one's a little bit hard, because as much as I feel the Cats can get it done, coming off of the bye and then having to travel to Adelaide in the exact same week, this is the week where you can actually tip the opposition to get up and do a number on them. I'm still going to back Geelong. I'm going to back Geelong. They have been the premier team this year. I just feel Port Adelaide, there's a bit of an upset looming there. I feel there's a possible upset. But I'm locking in Geelong. Geelong for me, over in Adelaide, off of the bye, Saturday afternoon. And Sunday rounds out round 14, back at Marvel Stadium, with the Bulldogs taking on Collingwood. Collingwood heavy favourites to win this one, and they are for a reason. I am backing Collingwood quite comfortably to stamp their top 4 placing. I don't see them dropping out of the top 4 at all this year. However, somebody has a feeling they might just drop out of the top 4, because it is now time for a little segment we like to call the Touch of Death. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with what the Touch of Death is, that's when my good mate the Grim Reaper swings on by with the scythe, marks one team for death, and in doing so, puts them down for a loss that particular week. Has not been successful yet with tipping a correct team. However, this weekend, Collingwood are marked for death. The Grim Reaper is selecting the Western Bulldogs to get up over Collingwood to get the job done. I thought that was a huge call, considering the Grim Reaper has a bit of an affinity for the Collingwood Magpies, let me tell you what. However, looking at the stats, Collingwood versus Bulldogs all season, they have been pretty close back and forth. The Reaper thinks if the Doggies can put together a solid 4 quarters, a win is certain for them on the horizon. They are harder at the ball at times, and even though Collingwood have strung together some absolute brilliance, have one of the better, midfields of the competition, undoubtedly the best ruckman in the competition, the Doggies' 1%er acts have them better on the ground than Collingwood. And even though Grundy might dominate the ruck, Bulldogs have proven they can crumb the opposition ruckman as good as any team in the competition. So even though Collingwood come into this game heavily favoured, the Reaper believes the Doggies can dig deep enough to get the job done. Let me know in the comment section down below if you feel the Reaper is on the money this week. However, that wraps up my tips for the weekend. Having a look over who I selected, I'm going with the Eagles, Hawthorn, Fremantle, Brisbane, Geelong and Collingwood. Let me know in the comment section down below who are you tipping for this weekend's action. As I said, next week we will have an updated tally running into the final 8 rounds of the season, and as I mentioned, there are still a number of players that are fighting for positions. It's time for me to really sit down now and work out what I'm going to do when it comes to the prize structure, because I want to thank each and every one of you for getting behind this initiative. Seriously, cannot thank you guys enough for the support you have thrown behind myself and this channel this year. Might make it worthwhile. We might just make it a little bit worthwhile. But that's it from me, guys. Thank you for joining me. Be sure to leave a like on the video. It goes a long way to supporting myself. I cannot thank you guys enough for all that support, as I just mentioned. If you're new to the channel and gameplays are your thing, I've got plenty of them going on, so be sure to go check those out. And if you do like what I'm throwing down, hit that subscribe button, pledge your allegiance to the Godzilla Nation. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. Good luck to your teams this weekend if they are playing. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.